Welcome to another kidOYO tutorial. In this section, we will be working with the if-then-else block to complete a quiz. So far, we have all of our intro statements set up, and we have our first question. So in my first question, I have ask, is a grasshopper a producer, a consumer, or a decomposer? And wait. Now, the program is going to wait until I have supplied an answer. So in our sensing category is where we find our answer. However, if you'll see, this is a round block, and it won't actually fit into this open hexagon. You can drop it there, but it's not actually accepting it in. And that's because we actually need to set up an operator that says if the answer equals, then I can do what is inside here. So let's click on our operators, and we're going to look for the block that has an equal sign in the middle of it and drag it into our open hexagon. You can see how when I came close to the hexagon, it started to glow white, and that means it's ready to accept it into its open slot. Now I can drag the answer into that first opening, and you'll notice too that I always come from the bottom right hand side. It makes it easier to get the block in. Sometimes it'll look like you're in when you're not really if you don't come in from that side. Okay, so now I can simply type in the answer into the second statement, and now be really careful here, because if you spelled it wrong and your user, your quiz taker, spells it right, or vice versa, then it's going to produce the answer as being an incorrect answer. So we're going to say if the answer is consumer, then I want something to happen that shows that it is actually correct. So I have created a new sprite, and I created this sprite by clicking on the paintbrush tool, and it brought up my paint editor, and then I just used a couple of different shapes and typed in the word correct. So I'm going to save that step, and I'll come back here. So I have my answer sprite, and you can see from the costume it just simply says correct. And I put a little bit of code onto my answer sprite ahead of time. So what I want to happen is that when this answer is given correctly as consumer, then it needs to send a message to my correct answer sprite to show up. So to do this, we use what's called broadcasting. And we do it for a number of reasons. One is it's a generic message that's created. So it's kind of like a siren from a fire station. It might ring 2 times. It doesn't actually yell out and say, there's a fire, or there's an accident, there's an accident. It just simply will sound the siren 2, 3, or 4 times. And the firemen know when they receive that siren what to do. So that's really the same thing that's happening here. When this sprite sends out a broadcast signal, it will be received everywhere, including within this own sprite. Every part of the program can hear it, the stage and any sprites can hear it, and when they hear that message being sent, that broadcast, then they are programmed on their side to know what to do when they receive it. So in this case, we're going to set up our first broadcast by clicking on the events blocks, and we'll come down to the very first broadcast block that says broadcast, and you'll see I've already typed in correct, but for you what you need to do is click on the drop-down menu, you'll click on new message, and it'll pull this message window up, and you can just type in the word correct and click OK. So now I have a broadcast message. So we'll end up receiving that message over here on Sprite 1, but before we do that, I want to set up what happens if that's incorrect. So what we'll do is we're going to use one of these say blocks again. So what will happen is the program will ask, is a grasshopper a producer, a consumer, or a decomposer? And if the quiz taker answers consumer, it'll broadcast correct. The correct sprite will flash on the screen for a couple of seconds and then move on to the next question. But if it's wrong, we'll have it say something to the user. So we'll say, pull this say and wait for 2 seconds. And I like to do the wait just so that I can make sure there's a little bit of pause before the next action happens. So I'm going to replace hello with that is incorrect. And then I'm going to tell them grasshoppers are consumers. That way they know that they answered it incorrectly, but they also know why it was incorrect and what the correct response was. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and get that caught up in your program and then join me for how to program the answer sprite.